After experiencing the grandeur of Dark Souls, I decided I should check out the next game in this series, Dark Souls 2. And it's a lot different from the other FromSoft games. You need to worry more about leveling your dodge, getting stamina to regen faster, and trying not to get lost. I'm pretty sure I had no idea where to go at least 50% of the time in this game, and so many bonfires are hidden. There are a lot of mechanics in Dark Souls 2 that are unique to it, and because of this, there's something quite charming about the game. It's not perfect by any means, but definitely feels like the most epic adventure you could go on. I honestly loved my experience in Dark Souls 2, even though the DLCs kicked my butt. Here is how I beat Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, for the first time. Starting off our journey in the Things Betwixt, we almost die to some goblins and invade the personal space of these nice ladies. For this run, I wanted to go pure strength. This meant using the biggest sword I could find and trying to flatten things. I chose the warrior class because he gets a decent point total in strength, and the healing wares are what I decided on for my gift, which I ended up trying to save most of these until I beat the game, rendering the bigger ones completely useless. But it was a nice thought at least. After dying to an ogre several times, I got my hands on the stone ring, which helps reduce enemy poise. After meandering about with the fun torch mechanic, I stumbled upon Majula and the game can now begin. I messed around grabbing anything I could and talking to a cool cat. Grabbing the Estus shard flask from the well here and moving on to the first area. Getting used to how dodging works without much ADP was a pretty noticeable hurdle, but the areas in Dark Souls 2 surprised me with how awesome they looked and felt. After several close calls, I found another bonfire and met a very important merchant. Died to a very disrespectful lizard and eventually got my hands on the fire longsword. It's just down this tunnel here, and for what I was told, you can deal amazing damage with this early on. So until we find a massive sword, this will have to do. With the blacksmith having his shop unlocked with the key that merchant had and a quick death in the hole here, we're back at the grind of finding literally any clue where the first boss was. I accidentally exploded a wall, which really helped out, and then found myself in front of the last giant. After quickly being humbled, I ran all the way back and took him on again. Yay! First boss down. The giants are a major theme in Dark Souls 2, which I actually enjoyed. Learning all the lore about the war between them and the king was quite interesting. Although odd this guy isn't actually the last giant, but more on that later. With our first hurdle down, I decided to level ADP as early as possible. This stat affects your iframes when you dodge or roll. The lower ADP you have, the easier it is to get hit, even if you dodge. I didn't feel like dealing with that for long, and thank goodness I made that call. It was the right one. After much more exploration and a nice death against this invader, the Pursuer made his second appearance. I was surprised by how easily you could dodge this boss. All of his attacks are telegraphed way beforehand, and getting behind him for attacks was also simple enough. This was good, however, because our damage is quite low. After some expert level dodging and S tier attacks, I managed to defeat the Pursuer. Well, eventually that is. That almost got me. I couldn't do this without the extra stamina regen. Got him! Past this point is the Dragonslayer set, which I really didn't use much, but it was a nice find at least. This time choosing to level Endurance as the precious green resource refuses to regen in this game. It's so slow and honestly my main complaint. although using 2 Ultra Great Swords might have affected that a bit. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. With a quick ride from a bird, we are transported to the Lost Bastille. The enemies here are quite lovely, and for some reason I can't kill the pursuer when he spawns outside the first boss fight. I lost to him earlier and here as well. The dogs didn't help, that's for sure. I met Lucatiel, one of the very few NPCs I encountered multiple times in this run. She's cool, got her help later on for a boss fight, which was pretty epic. But nothing of note right now, really. One thing that is really common in Dark Souls 2 is the ridiculous boss runs. Sometimes there's a lot of ground to cover, but in this case there are a crap ton of enemies guarding the door. Thankfully, we have life gems because there's no way I'd have enough flasks for this. The ruined Sentinels promptly beat me to death, and I decided to just come back later. 3v1 didn't seem like good odds at the time. Back in Majula, we take a different path to Hyde's Tower of Flame. Didn't take long to learn the enemies here were chunky and hit like it too. Ran past basically all of them and found myself up against the Dragonrider. I know you could cheese him off the platform here, but I figured I'd fail that and wanted to see what he was all about anyway. Our sword was doing some pretty good damage at this point, and this boss also telegraphs really heavy attacks quite clearly. So no issues and a nice quick win for us. But sort of.
Yeah, it's like halfway through the fight he starts doing that attack, which he doesn't have before. Alright, buddy, you're going down. That's all I know.
Another nice lady got a stern talking to, and then I leveled strength and stamina a bit more. Literally the only Souls game I upgraded stamina early on. Kind of crazy. With a small journey through the sewers and meeting a couple basilisks, I am in No Man's Wharf. Well, not before dying to this stupid dragon back in Hyde's Tower, just real quick. It's all about the adventure, am I right? No Man's Wharf is pretty well named. No man should come here. There are a ton of enemies and half of them are dogs. Need I explain more? Lucatiel was chilling here again, and I also met Gavlon after freaking out these alien monster things. Gavlon was cool, I can't lie. I purchased a ring from him that upped my poise. I also summoned my man Bradley to help me clear out some of this riffraff. After dying several times in this hellhole, it was nice to have such a tank help me out. Later on, I also summoned the Steed, a legend in my chat who guided me to some hidden rooms, one of which held the Royal Soldier's Ring for extra load. Quickly died to gravity, as it usually goes, and then summoned Lucatiel for a battle on a ship. The Flexile Sentry guards this majestic boat, and he has a body on his front and back, which makes it impossible to sneak up on him, but luckily he only uses one side at a time. With Lucatiel's help, I made short work of him and never even needed to worry about the water level slowly rising under my feet. Also, yeah, the fire sword was an extremely good find early on.
Having a secondary support is really powerful. Like, insanely powerful. She face tanked all the damage.
Clearly, I know how to steer a ship and decided to take it over to the Lost Bastille. Same location I left earlier, but different way to get there. I burnt some Sublime Bone Dust back in Majula for better healing and spent more souls, leveling strength up to 22. Back at the Lost Bastille once again, we find ourselves up against some really sucky enemies. Crossbow dudes shooting me left and right, and more dogs chasing me than I really felt like dealing with. But after some goofy shenanigans with the exploding barrel there, I finally made it to another blacksmith. He has large Titanite, which will be excellent for some weapon upgrades later on. With my fire sword now at +5, it was time to retry the ruined Sentinels. This arena is basically a square room. You enter on a platform above, and the Sentinels will jump up to fight you if you don't fall down. This lets you take on 1 or 2 at a time rather than all 3 at once. I died several times trying to figure out what was going on here, but eventually I stuck to blocking with a shield. Each Sentinel has a nice amount of delay after attacking, which allowed me to get free hits in. The first one went down, and then things started to get a bit trickier. Couldn't get past that point, and eventually decided to just take a break. Went back to No Man's Wharf and found the Ultra Great Sword I intended to find earlier, but missed. This was the weapon I wanted to use for the rest of the run, but I needed to upgrade it and get used to its slower speed. So for now, I bought the Twin Dragon Great Shield, and went back at the Sentinels. With that much better shield, I won immediately. It made this much easier, and with some carefully timed attacks, it was another glorious victory.
Oh, no greedy. Boom! Let's go!
Not only was this the most noticeably challenging boss so far, but I also found numerous illusionary walls in this boss room. Nothing I found was crazy helpful or anything, but it was all pretty cool at least. Too bad I lost one of these chests to this moron though. Back in Majula, I upped my vitality to 12 and strength to 25. The next area was filled with booby traps, and of course the pursuer killed me once again. Found a ton of weird items in dark areas until meeting up with Stride, a wandering sorcerer who got turned to stone. He's not all that nice considering I just freed him, but you can turn certain boss souls over to him for cool weapons. I didn't end up using this too much until the DLC, so it's not really super helpful right now. After summoning Lucatile once again, I got her help to defeat the boss from before, but this time he's a regular enemy. And you have to do it in high water, which did not make things easy. She really helped out though, as this area would have sucked without her. After using the Bastille Key to light some oil for the arena, it was time to face the Lost Sinner, or Bed of Chaos reincarnated, sort of. Apparently this boss fight is very dark if you don't light up that oil beforehand, but luckily I didn't need to find that out and could defeat this boss first try. His attacks are really slow, and using a good shield kinda feels like cheating, but a win's a win, and that's one of the 4 main bosses down.
Weird that you can't... It's not weird, but... You gotta be careful taking a heal and then trying to block again. Got greedy, I got greedy. You saw it. Oh, I did it again. That was a fun little attack. He almost killed me with instantly.
We got a good amount of souls from this fight, so I upgraded vitality up to 17 and strength to 30, which meant I could now use my ultra great sword to its full extent and still have a good dodge as long as I put the shield away. Using this weapon proved to be a really great decision. I went back over to Hyde's tower and finally got that dragon out of the way, but sadly, I had terrible stamina, so running with no armor is the only option we have right now. Doesn't look pretty, but hey, it's effective. Yeah, the ultra great sword is kind of good. I don't know if I mentioned that. Past this was the old Dragonslayer or Ornstein 2.0, but fortunately for me, he's only half as good as Ornstein was, and he goes down quickly.
Come on.
Let's go! First try, baby! I walloped the NPC here as well for no real reason, and then just moved on.
Did it.
You are my greatest challenge. This is the ultimate challenge.
What are you doing, buddy?
Great Sentinel.
Here is another time where I just got extremely lost. Even with chat telling me where to go, I could not find the doorway in Majula that was to the left of where you enter here for the first time. Just completely missed it. Once through, we talked to this guy with a really cool sword that's apparently fake, or at least another NPC seemed to think so. We free Rosabeth and move on to slay monsters that look pretty awful. I do think it's cool how many NPCs there are in Dark Souls 2. Felt like I was constantly running into someone whose life had been ruined and I could exploit for goods. After entering the Misty Woods, I found that the Ultra Greatsword is a bit hard to use with so many trees around. I had a fun time getting through this nightmare and even went back to talk to a head, as well as grab the Chloranthy Ring +1. Super helpful stuff, but really rough getting this done. That talking head guy I found not only sells lightning resin, which is extremely helpful, but he sells an additional ultra great sword. Considering how cool power stancing is in this game, I think you can see where this is going. After finally reaching the stony walkway with fun invisible enemies and jars that want to murder you, it was time to stop and pick her back up a few days later. With my Dark Souls 2 journey only just beginning, it was time to jump back in. With a lot of stumbling around, we eventually run into Najka, a beautiful scorpion lady who doesn't really want to chat. I ran around a lot in this fight and just avoided her attacks. But with the heavy damage my sword was doing, she went down just like all the others.
Yeah, I ran out of stamina again. Oh, that didn't feel good. We can get in here for this. Get out of here. I beat you encumbered.
Behind this arena was Doors of Pharos, aptly named as I wasted plenty of Pharos lockstones here. But first we needed to level strength up to 34 and improve our Estus flasks to now have 5 of them. With some more getting lost, I eventually turned up outside fighting some soldiers. Felt reasonably comfortable taking these guys on, but sadly, I eventually got.
Well, I feel like you... The iron chests can be mimics?
It's important that Dark Souls humble you every so often, you know? After messing around with some big balls, I eventually stumbled upon my worst nightmare. Spiders. Apparently, we had gotten to the area that's covered in them. They litter the wall, hide in holes, hang from the ceiling, and generally swarm you until you pass out from fear. Or bites. Their biting hurts too. Luckily, they hate fire, which made dealing with them a lot easier, although they still freaked me out every single time. While I was slightly distracted, I found the next boss fight. It's pretty sad when you die to the gimmicky easy boss instantly. This room consisted of one main boss and several minions. 2 of the minions would heal everyone constantly and the others try to kill you. Didn't take me long to finish the fight, but there were maybe a little too many close calls, I'll admit.
Greatsword be doing big smack damage. Okay, now how do I kill him? These things take damage for the boss? They do? Oh, I didn't know that.
With our vigor now up to 20, we head back to the Spider Haven and wander around for a good hour. This tiny area has so many different rooms and directions to go that you can get lost for a long time. I met this guy Cromwell, I guess. Gotta be at least a little weary of a dude who chills with spiders 24/7. Something's not quite right with that guy is all I know. After many jump scares, I found a massive room crawling with more spiders and an invader. Took care of them and then climbed down some webs. Nothing to see here. Gotta give this game credit though, the areas are really cool. Each feels different from the last, and climbing down massive spider webs is, while terrifying, kind of awesome. Soon enough though, it was time to meet Freja, the Duke's spider, I guess, who used to fit in a tiny cage, but can now defeat dragons. Someone's been taking their protein. In this battle, you need to deal with many small spiders while taking on the Big Mama. A torch forces the little dudes to leave you alone, but the Big Mama can only be hit in the face for any damage whatsoever. She has a face on the front and back, which allows you to go for whichever one isn't attacking you. I died dealing with the laser, and because the run back here is quite long, I got a bit lost and died to stupid Forlorn. Darn you, Forlorn. Back in the boss room, I didn't even use the torch for my final run. My strategy was to run away from the little guys and then hit Big Mama in the back when she would laser. It proved very effective, and was one of the most memorable boss fights I've ever seen.
Immediately does a laser. I have a way with words. I don't know what it is. Must be a distance attack. Laser. One attack and we leave. One attack and we leave. Laser again. Nice. Oh, got greedy. I got greedy. Let's get out. Let's get out. Behind her. Oh my word, I did it. I did it.
And yeah, here's the cage that spider used to be in. Crazy. Back in Majula, we level strength up to 40. The idea at this point was to power stance 2 ultra great swords, which would give me some crazy damage, but we don't quite have enough strength to do that yet. With 2 major bosses down, I felt like heading into the Grave of Saints. Wasted a few Pharaoh's Lockstones again, but found my way to the Royal Rat Vanguard. A very easy fight when you can hit half the enemies on the screen with one swing, and it's safe to say our damage at this point was feeling quite nice.
Dang it. Greatsword is very rough here because of all the statues. Oh, I did fat damage to him. Oh, he's got spiky hair. He's got spiky hair. Oh, crap.
I did join up with the rat, though, to gain the crest of the rat. Never really turned out to help me, though, as I never spent much time in the area where enemies become passive if you wear it. But I did find the gutter after this. Essentially, Blighttown 2.0. A lovely place where you can't see anything. The enemies here weren't that bad, to be honest, but finding which direction I was supposed to head confused the heck out of me. I ended up lighting almost every brazier trying to get out of there. It was hectic, and I died being greedy for several loot items. In the end, I made my way across this desolate region, only to find a massive bug that just sits there. Never figured out why this was here, but it was neat in a way. Got quite a bit of loot in this location, but none of it really benefited me greatly, which leads us now into Black Gulch, the poisonous region of pain and suffering. Not too many enemies here, but there's about 1,000 statues that spit poison at you, and it's very infuriating. Forlorn made a quick reappearance, but I squashed him like the bug he truly is. Took me a while to clear a way through this place. It's not overly long, but when you stop to destroy every statue out of principle, it takes forever. Fought a few eyeball hand things as well, and maybe a worm or two. All before making it to another invader. Dark Souls 2 really loves to throw invaders at you when you don't want to fight them. In the middle of poison that's impossible to avoid? Yeah, why not try to kill me? Thankfully, I survived the encounter and then I came up against the statue. If I hadn't had a branch of yore for this, I would have lost it. But my luck had not run out yet. Grabbed a quick bonfire and then headed in to fight the Rotten. Apparently, this is a pretty good boss to farm out. NG plus this area and you have a bonfire right there to just enter the fight over and over. Which you don't NG plus every area in the game. Instead, you NG plus any specific area at that bonfire, respawning that one boss. He'll be tougher to take down, but you get way more souls. I didn't use this here, but considering how much damage I did to him, it would have been a pretty easy strat to pull off. I died a few times due to poorly timed dodges, but with the lightning resin he got demolished. Fun fight, but very creepy boss design.
Now that is some damage right there, man. Look how cool this looks.
Here we find the entrance to the Poison DLC. One of 3, which I will take on later, but trust me, it's an absolute mess. Back in Majula, we level up to 101, and now find ourselves with nowhere to go once again. At least nowhere that I know of. So I used a few lockstones to get the Santier's Spear. A dex weapon that I can't use much of, but it gains a new moveset if you break it and leave it broken. So I thought I'd at least check it out. Spend at least 20 minutes hitting stuff to break the weapon. Eventually going back to things betwixt to hit the bird's nest there. For whatever reason, your weapon durability gets destroyed if you hit this, making it useful for this item. Turns out this spear becomes a twin blade of sort if you break it. One attack hits multiple times and it looks really cool. Again though, this was mostly for show as I'm a pure strength build. Now that I have beaten a portion of the game, I headed down the stone pathway to meet this lady once again. She moves the path for me, for the cost of a few souls, which opens up more of the game for me to explore. Really had no idea this was here, and it took me a while before I got back into some combat. This secret pathway led to a very dark and desolate forest. But, at this point, I had enough strength to power stance my 2 swords. So, everything was dying instantly. It was awesome. Once again, Forlorn made an appearance, and I made him regret that one time he caught me underprepared. With some executioner-type dudes absolutely embarrassed, it was time for, well, an invader again. And he had my sword, no less. A mistake he won't make twice. Now it was time for the Executioner's Chariot, a gimmick fight where you need to hide in the wall to avoid the horse while defeating skeletons at the same time. After a few tries of figuring out what the heck was up, I found the lever which essentially kills the guy on the chariot. Then it was a 1v1 against a horse, and well, my swords were making this game look like a joke.
See what he does now, huh?
Past this boss was a little midget who wanted me to join his gang. I did, but I guess it's a PvP covenant, so it wasn't really useful at all. Back in the forest, we let down a bridge and get ready to fight loads more skeletons. Down some tunnels, the skeleton lords awaited me. There are 3 of these guys, and killing one will summon many more smaller skeletons in their place. They're only 2-hit kills really, but once these smaller ones come out, it's chaos. Mostly I spent my time running from the wheelie skeletons. Killing all 3 big lords at once might not be the best idea, but we got the job done. I'll say swords this big do come in handy when you get swarmed. You kind of just panic swing and it all works out.
Over here. Oh my. Anybody else hate skeletons? Okay. Getting close. Where'd my souls go? I need those. Well, that seems inappropriate. Oh my word. You guys have so much reach. You don't expect it. Get out of here.
With another win under our belt, it's time for the Harvest Valley, which stands for Harvest My Tears as I die from poison over and over and over. We get to meet Chloanne, who is a bit weird for holding a skull, but that doesn't make her any less attractive, now does it? Not sure what this says about me other than I have a lot to figure out in my dating life. This is another area filled with loads of items to pick up, but also it's filled with nasty stuff that isn't fun to take down. After some humiliating deaths and a rational hate for poison brewing, we were inside the windmill. More poison, and added fire, which is just lovely. Covetous Demon made his appearance. I love the way he bounces around the room. Kind of interesting. I'd heard he was a pretty easy fight, but wow, wasn't quite expecting this.
Oh yeah! I'm gonna die, aren't I? Not today. Oh, what the heck? And crawl? Get out of here, dude.
The poison-filled windmill went about as you might expect. Sucked, then it didn't suck, then it sucked again. And I never found out you could burn it either. I mean, I did after beating the whole game, but yeah, that made things a bit more difficult. Because Mytha the Baneful Queen was up next. If you know anything about this fight, you know why I ran into trouble. If you don't burn the windmill, this arena is filled with poison, which kills you the entire time you fight this snake lady. Since she isn't super easy to dodge, on top of this, you get killed quite quickly. I tried several times with no luck, but then suddenly, it just happened. I got close enough that I felt it was possible, and bam. Never burned the windmill and still made it out. I was shocked. I definitely made this way harder than it needed to be, but isn't that what Souls games are really about?
Need one more attack. Come on, heal. Yes! Oh, I feel so golden right now. Let's go! Oh, never doubt me again.
One might think the next area would be slightly more relaxing, right? I don't know what game you think this is, but no. We're now in Iron Keep, the place of nightmares. To start off with, there is an invader here called Armored Dennis. He's a mage who completely destroyed me several times. Past him are about 15 to 20 samurai knights that have quick attacks. Getting through these guys and the many archers that plink away at you is not for the faint of heart. And then Forlorn showed up yet again. What is with this guy?
Forlorn about to get his butt kicked. Or I'm gonna get my butt kicked. Those are two of the options. Okay. Very cool and interesting gameplay we've decided to do here. Oh crap, I'm dead. Nope, I'm legend. Oh, they shall write songs about me. The warrior that ran from everything. They're fast too. Not today. Run! No, not walk, run! What are you doing? You suck.
I can't even count how many times I died while turning off the furnace, letting down the side bridge, and then getting to the next boss fight. It was excruciating, just because these enemies are so fast. Having them gang up on you is instant death. Eventually, I made it past and entered the fight with Smelter Demon, only to die and have to go through it all again. Curse you, Dark Souls 2. Curse you. The Smelter Demon mainly attacks you with his sword. This isn't too hard to dodge, but once he goes flame on, even being near him causes you to take damage. Any of his massive fire abilities crush your spirit. Honestly, this felt like one of the harder bosses in the main game. The run makes each death more brutal than the last, and it's very easy to mess up and mistime his attacks. But where there's a will, there's also a way, and with almost no health left, he finally goes down.
Perfect timing. Got greedy. Yes! Let's go.
Did I mention there's another version of this guy in the DLC? Yeah, I can't wait. Another pursuer shows up in this boss arena afterwards, and finally I'm able to take him down. Unfortunately, we're at that point where we need to actually clear this castle. It's full of fire, heavily armored bad guys, and archers. Always more archers. The area above this was cool, I have to admit, and fighting the little bell warriors was a blast. I got really close to completing all this finally, and then of course I got killed. So after redoing everything, I found the ladder that leads to a bonfire and turns off the fire in this hellhole, making for a really fast run to the next boss. Old Iron King. If anything, Dark Souls 2 has some cinematic bosses, mainly because of the massive arenas they're placed in. This is essentially the king of this Iron Keep that has now become a devil, sinking this castle down into the depths of fire and brimstone. Or at least that's what I gathered. First time facing him, he never even came close to the platform for me to attack him, which had me a bit worried. In my confusion, I gave myself an honorable death, and turns out he was just a bit goofed. Next try, he came much closer, and it turned out to be a pretty epic fight that I had some fun with.
Yeah, I'm pro gamer, guys. Don't worry about me. What is he doing?
With the third major boss down, I was forced to talk to this massive, gooey death, the brother of Vendrick, if I remember correctly, who is in fact the scholar of the first sin, from the title. You guys get it? We also find the entrance to the Fire DLC here, the absolutely wretched Fire DLC, which almost took my soul with it. We'll come back to that later though, don't you worry. Now at level 119, 42 strength, 24 vigor, and 24 endurance, I was feeling pretty good about my stats. ADP still at 20, but that hasn't been much of an issue so far. Met Gilligan. It's a shame what happens to him in Dark Souls 3, but hey, that's the way it goes. Bought some bleed serum from him, although it never came into play much, and once again we're completely lost. So I decided to go free Ornifex and find her once again by the spiders. She could transform certain boss souls into powerful weapons, and there were a few that I thought would be cool to get. Went back to Black Gulch and dropped down to fight some hidden giants. They're pretty tough, but behind them is the Ring of Giants +1. So worth it for even more poise. Also went back to Stride to get the Smelter Sword, a really powerful strength weapon that can deal fire damage. So with no way of knowing where to go, it was time to take on the Poison DLC. Right behind the Rotten where it should have been locked away forever. And yeah, this DLC is pretty massive. You explore this huge ziggurat-looking area. Loads of poison everywhere, and the enemies can kill you in about 2 hits. This first part was one of the very few places in the game where I actually killed an enemy 12 times with death in between to get them to despawn. I wasn't trying to do that, but it just happened. It's a massive maze, and each time you figure out part of the puzzle, you die and have to retrace your steps to the same dead end. It's absolutely nuts. Most of the bonfires are hidden as well, which makes getting to a checkpoint challenging to say the least. After dying to all sorts of weird creatures and an annoying invader, of all things, I worked my way to Elana. The most annoying thing about Dark Souls 2 DLCs is that there are only 3 bosses in each, but yet you explore the areas for hours. Makes you feel like you're getting nowhere. Fortunately, the bosses themselves are quite good. Elana being easier than most. She can deal high damage with her melee and magic attacks, summoning an additional boss to help her out about halfway through as well. This felt impossible until I went naked, which made it 10 times easier. I honestly just went naked for most of the harder fights, and it worked out. Elana gave me some trouble, but as long as I kept the 2 enemies away from each other, it was okay.
Ow! Very scary. Target lock not being my friend. Okay, I thought I could jump in there. Turns out I couldn't.
Right behind this boss area, with only a bonfire in between, was another boss fight. Weird to put both bosses side by side, but okay, I'm down for whatever. That is until the slumbering dragon showed up. This stony beast was the bane of my existence. He's got poison blasts that explode, flying animations that make him hard to see, and your typical fire breath that hits you from all angles. I died many times here, and because he has so much health, you have to use repair powder to fix your weapon mid-fight. Otherwise, it'll break and you're just screwed. Considering how hard the Poison DLC had been thus far, it made sense for this dragon to be an absolute monster. Regardless, I don't think I was prepared. After learning to just eat heals whenever I could, as much as I could, the fight came to its ultimate conclusion. I was exhausted after this fight for sure, but it felt really good to finish her up. Now, I did mention that the DLCs all have 3 bosses, and we've only completed 2 of them. That's because the last fight is sort of secret. You need to go back to the beginning of the ziggurat, use the Eternal Sanctum key in the Dragon's Sanctum. This gets you up to a bridge that leads you back across to a bonfire. It's of course heavily guarded, and I promptly got shown to my death. The next boss fight is ahead of us, and well, both the fight and the run to it sucks, and it sucks hard. There's an incredible number of enemies all squished into a tiny series of tunnels. One tunnel leads to the boss door, but it's so easy to lose track of where you are and end up in a dead end with 30 enemies on your tail. Finally in the boss room, and it's a gank squad fight. 3 warriors take you on at the same time. One with fast swords, one with a bow, and then there's the Aava wannabe. There's no good way to even hit any of the 3 because the other 2 will be right on your tail. At least they give you plenty of room in the arena, but it's also a mess of tunnels, which isn't exactly great. Eventually, after focusing down the archer and kiting the other 2 around for what felt like 10 minutes, I managed to come out on top.
I can't backstab him because I can't get behind him. Because there's 2 of them. And once there's 1, I can backstab. You can't do it with 2 of them because they're always watching each other's back. Now watch how easy this is. Because the problem is that there's more than 1 of them.
It took way more heals than I'm proud of, but it was finally done. The Poison DLC had been defeated. With such a win under our belts, I was feeling pretty good. I located the portal for the Ice DLC and then headed on up to Dragonslayer Castle, running into all the big bads along the way and being slightly confused by this closed door for a bit. Needed to kill an enemy near the statue so it could absorb the soul. Neat mechanic, honestly. Dragonslayer Castle is full of the Sentinel enemies we fought earlier as bosses. There are loads of them in this one room. Then we have another invader, statues that come alive, and as always, more hidden bonfires. Run into the queen here, who we learn is pretty devious. Too bad I can't just hop this distance here and knock her off her high horse. Instead, we move on into the dual Dragonrider fight. This is another copy boss from earlier in the game, except this time it's 2 of them. One fights you head on while the other starts with a bow and moves into melee as well. Dealing with 2 bosses at the same time is never easy, but these guys take plenty of damage.
1 down. Yo. Oh, do way more damage. That guy got a... That guy just weaker? What the heck?
Now sitting at level 135, we move on up to 30 ADP for some better dodges, and move on to fight the Looking Glass Knight, a boss that summons help from his shield. There's a lot of gank fights, or bosses with multiple enemies at the same time in this game. Makes it a bit harder to take each down, but honestly it's not too bad. Quickly defeat the smaller opponent and then the boss goes down soon after. The best aspect of this fight was by far the atmosphere. You have rain coming down hard, lightning flashing overhead, and a reflective boss looming over you. And quite the spectacle.
I feel like I dodged. Anybody else feel that? That one is definitely harder to get away from. Definitely better to be close when he does this attack. There we go, run attack. Get out of here. How about he taking me down?
Down the elevator we go into Shrine of Amana. Everyone kept saying this lizard-filled lake was rough, but I wasn't having any difficulty at all. That is, until I came across the cave with blue flowers everywhere. You can easily fall into the deep water and die to gravity, or be shot in the back with long-range magic. It's simple enough in concept, but there's a lot of enemies here. I made it to the end several times and just died right before reaching the boss. These hammer dudes were giving me a lot of trouble. With quite a bit of luck, I eventually found myself face to face with a bigger face. The face of a frog face. This weird creature was completely immune to all my attacks except if you hit her in the face. Very creepy looking enemy that I didn't really know anything about, but took her down regardless of any lore. Also, you may notice my armor's all over the place for this run. I was just kind of having fun wearing a crown at this point.
Demon of Song. Alright, well, that was easy.
Once again, the scholar shows up and speaks cryptically so as to confuse me. But we press forward into the dark and dreary dungeon ahead of me. More interesting enemies, a mostly depressing NPC, and yet again another invader. I also met the ghosts that come out when you hit bells, but not a fan of these guys. Very difficult to take on, and they definitely make your life hell. Smacked yet another invader and had to kill the wall boys before opening a path to the boss. This area was interesting as you need to kill these small guys or else you're dead. Leave them alive and they ring a hidden bell, summoning a ridiculous amount of those ghosts. Not good news for us. With them out of the way and the now regular enemy Chunguses taken care of, it's time to face Velstadt, the Royal Knight guy. Funnily enough, he is the same enemy the boss in the Poison DLC summons to help her out, although he proved much more of a nuisance here.
Or do that. That was kind of nice. Good opening. Dodge, please dodge. And you're dead. See why 2 Ultra Great Swords is my go-to? I mean, it's unmatched.
Here we meet Vendrick, a boss who needs to be taken down, but without a certain number of one particular item, he's nearly impossible. Or so I was told. Which now means it's time to do the magic doors. While wearing the ring we grabbed from Vendrick's old body, these dark magic doors will now unlock. There are several throughout the game, but you can't open them up until just now. One such door leads to Aldia's Keep, both an amazing place and a super sucky place at the same time. This area alone is almost its own game. You have enough enemy variety to keep you busy for days and several hard fights. I talked to a guy who wanted me to kill Gilligan, but that sounded sketchy. Fought more mirror people who quickly went down. Fought 2 red dudes with scythes, which did not go well. Took on an oversized basilisk and lit up all the braziers to acquire the Aldia key, which almost got me killed. This next area was sort of a testing chamber for monsters. We see mimics, gargoyles, ogres, weird wizard people, and even another monster I never saw again. It's all very dangerous, but also interesting at the same time. That is until you pull this lever, letting all the test subjects out, and they quickly make you regret your decision. Finally, we make it to the Guardian Dragon, a pretty standard red dragon we were introduced to earlier on.
Okay, you cannot cut his tail, because that definitely would have cut his tail if you could. Yeah, I fought the DLC dragon. You're literally nothing to me. You mean nothing to me, dude. Get wrecked, bro! Get wrecked!
This, of course, was a precursor to the most interesting area in a Souls game, Dragonland, or Dragonrider, a vast section of rocky islands connected by rope bridges and zip lines. I loved exploring this area, and since I had one Ultra Great Sword infused with lightning, the many dragons were a mere distraction. I got through the castle area pretty smoothly. As long as you kill the enemy there in each area, the guards don't come after you, so I made my way up the Majestic Kingdom slowly but surely. At the end, I conversed with an enormous dragon who gave me a key, which I think is what let me peer into the dead giant's memories, entering the past? At least that's what I can remember. Now, killing this dragon afterwards grants you one of those items to defeat Vendrick. I wanted to do everything I could in the game, so I tried my best, but he would not let me defeat him. His Fire Breath attack is unavoidable if you don't run towards his tail, but he kept getting stuck on the edge where I couldn't go towards the tail. After several tries, I vowed to come back later, as the run to that boss is pretty lengthy. In the meantime, I needed to deal with the memories, or where you go back in time to fight during the Human and Giant War. Firstly, I beat the Giant Lord, and then gained the other souls of a giant from the other trees. These trees are old dead giants that are scattered around the first area you explore. Coincidentally, right above the last giant, who was our first boss. There was more backtracking than I expected in this Souls title, but it turned out to be kind of cool.
Really hard to hit him. Giant Lord's dead. Boom. Easy.
I even entered the memory of the dead dragon that Spider Boss killed, a feature that not everyone knew about and gained me the Ancient Dragon Soul. With almost nothing left to do in the main game, I set to killing that giant dragon once again, but for the life of me, I could not do it. So instead, we head off to the Ice DLC. The Ice DLC is the best part of Dark Souls 2. It's really difficult, don't get me wrong, but 2 of the boss fights are fantastic and honestly unmatched. So many different things to fight, puzzles to solve, and rewards to reap. You gain the ability to see invisible enemies as part of the quest in that region and help these knights escape from bondage. I enjoyed fighting the enemies over here even though they gave me a lot of trouble. Although, once again, it's quite the maze. I probably spent at least 2 hours just walking around looting chests and stuff. Then you come to the first boss, Aava the King's Pet, an ice tiger capable of swiping at you and summoning crystals to hone in on your location. Honestly, an easier boss considering what I went through in the Poison DLC, but it still gave me a hard time.
Okay, you did something, whatever it was. I don't like it. Don't appreciate it. You messed with the wrong dude, bros.
With Aava bested, I was able to talk to this lady who frees the land of its icy prison, meaning I need to re-explore everything I just checked out. This time it will have more chests open, different paths to take, and even more enemies, unfortunately. The goal is to take down the Ivory King, which is below this lady I just mentioned. But to defeat him, you need the help of some large knights. So I went around and freed them all. Then I found the sled, or Toboggan of Death, resting place of impending doom. Whatever you want to call it, I got in and slid down the icy slope into the worst area of all Souls, Frigid Outskirts. I think anyone remotely familiar with this game understands why this area sucked. There's a blizzard all around you, the run to the boss fight here takes ages, and icy horses descend from the storm ready to kill you every so often. I died plenty of times to those hooved cretins before even figuring out a decent way to take them down. Then it was a 50-50 whether I even survived any of the encounters. The storm makes it incredibly easy to lose track of the path, and there are other enemies blocking your way as well. It's torture. After what seemed like hours of trying to reach the boss, I realized something even worse. This boss fight was rough. Remember the frozen tiger from earlier? Well, this one here is dark, and there's 2 of them. I had one heck of a time trying this over and over, and eventually had to call it a night. When I came back to the game, I decided to ease back into things and go take on the Burnt Ivory King first, just so I didn't have to subject myself to such pain right off the bat. With all the knights helping me, this boss wasn't too bad. It's kind of weird though how sometimes you get one of the knights to survive till the end, and other times they die early on. For those who don't know, the friendly knights help you fight off enemy knights for the first half of this battle. Slowly, your friends sacrifice themselves to ice up the doorways the enemy soldiers are coming from. All the while, you're left fighting for your life, hoping they don't all come at you alone. A very neat idea that turned out to be quite challenging. You'll often have more than one soldier on you, and this makes it hard to avoid damage. After getting rid of all the knights, our good friend the Burnt Ivory King finally shows up to play. He's a much faster boss than those usually fought in Dark Souls 2, but in a way, it still feels very doable. Leaving one of the enemy knights alive makes this extremely difficult, and eventually he'll summon an energy blade around his weapon, which is quite a bit harder to dodge since it's almost twice as long. Very cool fight with an amazing arena, but it took me a few tries to nail the best outcome of my knights surviving. Helped me get that extra edge I needed. And somehow I ended up leaving my knight alive even after the boss was finished.
Did I get greedy? Nope, I was perfectly greedy.
Oh! Of course, the Ice DLC was all wrapped up except for Frigid Outskirts, so I set out to grind to finish that up. I won't lie, it took forever, but eventually I managed to learn how to dodge the Tiger's melee attacks and came away with a win. Ooh, baby! Not sure if I'll ever be fighting these guys again, though. Maybe just leave it as a one-time thing. With 2 DLCs under our belt, I was at level 160 with 51 strength, 40 vigor, 30 endurance, and 30 ADP. My damage was extremely good with the power stancing, and Smelter Sword was great as backup. Turns out I accidentally skipped a fight very early on in the run, so I headed back to defeat the Gargoyles. This fight is a direct nod to Dark Souls, and instead of fighting 2 gargoyles, we fight like 5 of them. Now, since this is a fight for the early game, it was an absolute joke. I wasn't even taking much damage, and each gargoyle died in 2 hits. It was fun though. I can't imagine how hard that would be if you do it as intended.
I could see how this could be really hard. Especially with lower damage.
Of course, we have one last DLC to go through, and that is the Fire DLC. I won't go into detail about the area itself because it entirely sucked. There was not one fun part here. The enemies were annoying, the runs were long, and several rooms were simply unfair entirely. I especially raged at this tower here. An invader shows up to take you down, but instead of fighting, he walks down the stairs, getting every enemy to chase you. Some even respawn unless you kill the Fire Rod Abomination there. That tower alone made me furious, as the invader kept ticking me off. So what about the boss fights? Actually, they're pretty great. Blue Smelter Demon was first, and I actually came so close to defeating him on the first try. I mean, technically I did, but died at the same time. The run to this fight is hated by most. I understand why it sucks, but I immediately found a way to run through it while taking very little damage, so I didn't mind it too much. After Frigid Outskirts, I mean, anything was fine. He's not that different from the other Smelter Demon, but I got a cool blue sword out of it.
Gonna do it? I still got hit by it. Oof. Luck. Pure luck, dude. Gonna get greedy, I think.
Woo! Got him! Fume Knight was by far the hardest boss in Dark Souls 2. I mean, there's a bonfire directly next to the fight, which makes it seem a lot better, but this man is a menace. I had 3 rods, not 4 unfortunately, so I was able to get rid of most of the burning creatures who heal the boss. I just kept him away from the left side of the room and it was all good. Somehow I fell into the trap of wearing Velstadt's helm. I have no idea why I ever bought this or why I was wearing it. Looked cool, I guess. But this armor was from a boss I killed earlier, and apparently him and the Fume Knight have some beef with each other. Wear this helmet and the Fume Knight goes into his second phase very early on in the fight. His second phase is much more aggressive, meaning I wasted some time on this. After taking off that helm, it still took a few tries. Fume Knight felt like a boss that could be in Dark Souls 3. Much more aggressive, faster attacks, and some moves that are harder to read. I complained about stamina regen a lot here, as it's the only thing really that got in my way. Most of the time if I had issues with the boss, I simply used life gems instead of flasks and only hit one time before backing out. Getting greedy is so easy to do, even if you're aware of it. Odd how that works.
He's got that back attack, man. So hard to dodge. Woo! Bro, that's a hard one, dude.
Lastly, we have Sir Alonne, a really well done boss with a terrible, terrible boss run. It's in memory, which means you need to hurry, and we once again fight those samurai knights who were awful earlier. But now, there are fire-breathing lizards everywhere, and running past enemies was just too difficult. So each death meant a lot of time wasted fighting meaningless enemies. Sir Alonne himself was actually impossible to beat. I tried several times with the big sword versus fast attacks, but I just kept getting hit. No matter how hard I tried to conserve stamina, I just couldn't get out of the hitboxes. This led me to farming the Giant Lord boss for some souls to level ADP. I already had my stat at 30, which I thought was good, but apparently not, since I leveled it up to 35 and went back to beat him first try.
I'm like super nervous right now and it's stressing me out, and I'm thinking I'm gonna play bad because of it. Literally first try after getting more ADP.
Oh, and I finally killed the massive dragon during all this as well. Took a while as he has plenty of health, but he gave me another Soul of Giant for defeating Vendrick. And with Fume Knight being defeated, I crafted the Fume Sword to then fully upgrade it. The thing was pretty large, but made short work of Sir Alonne. So with the Ultimate Greatsword and all DLCs finished, it was finally time to beat Dark Souls 2. What a journey. It felt much longer than I thought it was gonna be, and the entire journey felt like such an adventure. After defeating Vendrick, talking to him, and then grabbing the king's armor from a guarded room, I felt like I really got a story here. My goal was to collect the souls of giants in order to bring down what was left of Vendrick, this sick and twisted being who had been left overcome by the curse. I followed his footsteps from the war caused by a devious queen to the misdealings of the first scholar who made a grave mistake. Something I never got from the other Souls games was a sense of narrative. I mean, it's there, but you sort of need to find it. In Dark Souls 2, you just get the full picture as long as you play the game. Each new zone crafted to tell a story, to show off some sort of disparity in the world and possibly teach a lesson. Yeah, ADP was kind of an annoying stat. None of the main bosses felt that difficult and are really outdone by the DLC ones. Heck, one might even say the extra healing gems made it too easy. But what an experience. There's something special about beating this game and I genuinely enjoyed it. The torch mechanic seemed really fun. Having NG Plus available in different zones feels very unique and interesting. I especially think getting rid of weapon durability with the way it was in this game was a good choice for sure. But Dark Souls 2 is actually kind of fun.
Can dodge that mostly.
I just want to give a big thanks to those of you who watched the whole video. I sat on the throne and became a king, finally beating one of the most epic quests I have ever been a part of. I felt quite attached to my character after finishing this game. We'd done so much and overcome plenty of challenges. Maybe Dark Souls 2 isn't the best Souls game, that's very fair to say, but it sure is one heck of an RPG, and a darn good one at that. Don't forget to like and subscribe as it does help me out as a creator, and I will catch you next time.